The first time Bethany Martinez saw Vincent Sterling, she nearly spilled coffee all over his $1,000 suit, and the first words out of his mouth were a complaint about the music being too loud in the waiting room. She had been working at the Manhattan Fertility Clinic for 3 years as a patient coordinator, guiding hopeful parents through one of the most vulnerable times in their lives. Vincent had walked in that Tuesday morning with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money, his dark hair perfectly styled, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. He was there for a consultation, alone, which immediately struck Bethany as odd since most of their clients came in pairs. "Mr. Sterling," she called from behind her desk, holding his file. He looked up from his phone, and she felt the full weight of his attention. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray-blue, intense and assessing. "That's me. Follow me, please. Dr. Chen will be with you shortly." As she led him down the hallway, she tried to make small talk. "First time here?" "Obviously," he said, his tone clipped. Bethany bristled but kept her professional smile plastered on. She had dealt with nervous patients before, and sometimes anxiety manifested as rudeness. "Dr. Chen is wonderful. You're in good hands." "I certainly hope so, considering what I'm paying." She paused at the door to the consultation room, turning to face him with a raised eyebrow. "The cost reflects the expertise and success rates, but if you're not comfortable, we can reschedule." For the first time, his expression shifted, something almost like amusement flickering across his features. "You don't take any attitude, do you?" "Not when I've had 3 cups of coffee and it's only 10 in the morning," she replied before she could stop herself. He actually smiled at that, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "Fair enough, I apologize. I'm not usually this difficult." "Usually? Okay, I'm frequently this difficult, but today it's because I'm nervous." The honesty caught her off guard. She softened immediately. "That's completely normal. This is a big step." He studied her for a moment, and she noticed how his shoulders relaxed slightly. "Thank you. I appreciate that." After she left him in the consultation room, Bethany couldn't stop thinking about him. There was something about Vincent Sterling that got under her skin, and she couldn't decide if it was irritation or intrigue. Probably both. She looked up his file when she got back to her desk, curiosity getting the better of her. The notes indicated he was 32, unmarried, and interested in preserving fertility before undergoing treatment for a medical condition. Her heart squeezed with unexpected sympathy. That explained the tension in his shoulders, the edge in his voice. Over the next few weeks, Vincent came in for several appointments. Each time, Bethany was the one who checked him in, and each time, their conversations got a little longer, a little more personal. "You're back," she said the third time he arrived, looking up from her computer with a genuine smile. "I am. Did you miss me?" He was teasing now, the nervous tension from that first meeting completely gone. Desperately, "I haven't had anyone complain about the music in days." "I apologized for that." "You did, and I appreciated it." He leaned against her desk, something he had started doing during his visits. She noticed he was wearing jeans today instead of a suit, and somehow he looked even better. "What are you listening to right now?" She glanced at her earbuds, forgotten on the desk. "Podcast about true crime." "Of course you are. What does that mean? You seem like the type who likes solving mysteries." Bethany laughed. "And you seem like the type who thinks he has everyone figured out." "Maybe I do. Then tell me what I'm thinking right now." He studied her for a long moment, his gaze so direct it made her pulse quicken. "You're thinking that I'm arrogant and probably difficult to work with, but also that there might be something interesting underneath all that." She tried to keep her expression neutral, but she felt heat rising in her cheeks. "That's quite an assumption." "Am I wrong?" Before she could answer, another patient walked in and Vincent straightened up. "I should let you work. See you around, Bethany." The way he said her name sent a shiver down her spine. It was another 2 weeks before she learned exactly how wealthy Vincent Sterling really was. She had been at a coffee shop near the clinic during her lunch break, scrolling through her phone, when she saw an article about a real estate mogul who had just closed a $200 million deal in Manhattan. The photo showed Vincent shaking hands with city officials, looking every bit the powerful businessman. Her coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Of course, he was a millionaire. Of course, he was one of those people who lived in a completely different world than she did. She had been enjoying their flirtation, the way he made her laugh, the electric feeling whenever he was near. But this changed things. Or did it? She was still mulling it over when Vincent walked into the clinic that afternoon, unscheduled. "Is Dr. Chen available?" he asked, approaching her desk with an urgency that immediately put her on alert. "Is everything okay? I just got some test results from my oncologist. I need to talk to Dr. Chen about moving up my timeline." Oncologist. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and frightening. "Let me check right now." Bethany stood immediately, her professionalism kicking in even as her heart raced with concern. She returned a few minutes later with Dr. Chen, who ushered Vincent into a private room. For the next hour, Bethany tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting back to Vincent. Cancer. He was dealing with cancer and he was doing it alone. At least, she had never seen anyone accompany him to his appointments. When he finally emerged, his face was carefully blank, but she could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands were shoved deep in his pockets. "Vincent," she called softly as he headed for the door. He turned, and for a second she saw raw vulnerability in his eyes before he shuttered it away. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't have to be fine." He stared at her for a long moment, and she watched him wage some internal battle. Finally, he walked back to her desk. "Do you want to get dinner?" The question surprised her. Now. I don't want to be alone right now, and you're the only person I've talked to in weeks who doesn't look at me like I'm dying." Her heart broke a little. "You're not dying." The doctors keep using words like aggressive and treatment and survival rates, so forgive me if I'm not feeling particularly optimistic. Bethany stood, grabbing her purse from under her desk. "Let me tell my supervisor I'm leaving early. Don't move." 20 minutes later, they were sitting in a small Italian restaurant a few blocks from the clinic. Vincent had been quiet during the walk over, his hands in his pockets, his expression distant. But now, across the table from her, he seemed to be searching for words. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "This is probably incredibly inappropriate. You're my healthcare coordinator. You're not my patient. You're Dr. Chen's patient. I just do paperwork." "Still, Vincent, it's okay. I'm glad you asked me." He looked up at her, really looked at her, and she felt that now familiar jolt of electricity. "Why are you being so nice to me?" "Because you need someone to be nice to you right now. And because, despite your terrible first impression, I actually like you." That earned her a small smile. "I like you too, more than I should." "Why shouldn't you?" He gestured between them. "Look at us. We're fundamentally different people. You work at a clinic helping people. I buy buildings and flip them for profit. You probably take the subway. I haven't been on public transportation in 10 years. You're kind and patient, and I'm difficult and demanding. So we're different. So what? It would never work." Bethany felt a flash of irritation. "You're already deciding we wouldn't work when we haven't even had a real conversation outside of a medical office, haven't we?" He leaned forward. "I've talked to you more in the past month than I've talked to anyone in my actual life. I know you like true crime podcasts and take your coffee with too much sugar and have a sister in Brooklyn who's getting married next month. I know you're scared of pigeons but love dogs, even though you can't have one in your apartment. I know you always smell like vanilla and that you bite your lip when you're concentrating. Her breath caught. She hadn't realized he had been paying such close attention. We're too similar, she said, and then laughed at herself. Actually, no, we're completely different, but maybe that's okay. We're both stubborn, Vincent said, both independent, both hiding behind walls. She tilted her head, studying him. What are you hiding from, honestly? Everything. I built my entire life around being in control, and now I have cancer, which is literally the one thing I can't control. And I've pushed away everyone who might care because it's easier than watching them look at me with pity. I don't pity you. No, you don't. That's why I wanted to have dinner with you. The waiter arrived with their food, breaking the intensity of the moment. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and Bethany marveled at how natural this felt, like they had been doing this for years instead of weeks. Tell me about your family, she said eventually. Vincent's expression shuddered slightly. Not much to tell. My parents divorced when I was young. My father remarried and started a new family. My mother lives in France with her third husband. I have a half-brother I see maybe once a year at Christmas. That sounds lonely. It is what it is. And that's why you're doing this alone. The fertility preservation, the cancer treatment, all of it. He set down his fork, his gray-blue eyes meeting hers. I don't know how to let people in. I never learned. Maybe it's time to start. Is that an offer? The question hung between them, loaded with possibility and risk. Bethany knew she should be careful, should maintain professional boundaries. But there was something about Vincent that made her want to throw caution to the wind. Maybe it is, she said softly. His hand reached across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His palm was warm, his grip firm but gentle. I have to warn you, he said. I'm terrible at relationships. I work too much, I'm controlling, and according to my ex-girlfriend, I have emotional unavailability issues. Well, I'm terrible at accepting help. I'm too independent for my own good, and according to my ex-boyfriend, I care more about my job than anything else. We're a mess. A complete disaster. We're too similar. He repeated her earlier words, but this time there was warmth in his voice. She squeezed his hand. Maybe similar is exactly what we need. They talked for hours, long after their plates were cleared and the restaurant began to empty. Bethany learned that Vincent had started his real estate company when he was 25 with money borrowed from a mentor who believed in him. She learned that he loved old movies and could quote entire scenes from The Godfather. She learned that he was terrified of the cancer, not because he was afraid of dying, but because he felt like he hadn't really lived yet. I've spent my entire adult life building an empire, he admitted as they finally left the restaurant, walking slowly through the cooling evening air. And for what? To prove to my father that I was worth something, to show everyone who doubted me that I could succeed. None of it matters now. It matters, Bethany said. You've built something incredible. You've created jobs, homes, opportunities. That's not nothing. But I've missed so much. I don't have close friends. I don't have family I talk to regularly. Until today, I couldn't remember the last time I had dinner with someone just because I wanted to spend time with them. They had reached the subway station where Bethany needed to catch her train home. She turned to face him, struck by how vulnerable he looked in the streetlight's glow. Vincent, you're not alone anymore, okay? Whatever happens with your treatment, whatever comes next, you have me now. You barely know me. Then let me get to know you better. He reached out, tucking a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her chest ache. Why are you doing this? Because everyone deserves someone in their corner, and because I want to. You're not a project or a charity case. I genuinely want to be here. Even though we're too similar, she laughed. Especially because we're too similar. Maybe we understand each other in a way other people wouldn't. He kissed her then, soft and sweet, right there on the street corner with people rushing past them. Bethany melted into it, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady under her palms. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I have to start chemotherapy next week. Okay, it's going to be awful. I'm going to be sick and tired and probably even more difficult than usual. I can handle difficult. Bethany, I'm serious. This isn't going to be easy. She pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. Nothing worth having ever is. I'm not going anywhere, Vincent. You need to accept that. He studied her face for a long moment, and she watched as something inside him shifted, like a wall coming down. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll let you in. I'll try at least. She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. That's all I'm asking. They exchanged numbers before she headed down to the subway, and by the time she got home to her small apartment in Queens, she had 3 texts from him. The first was a simple thank you. The second was a joke about her subway ride that made her laugh out loud. The third made her heart skip a beat. I haven't felt this hopeful in a long time. Thank you for that, she typed back immediately. That's what I'm here for. Get some rest. Call me tomorrow. The response came quickly. Count on it. Over the next few days, they talked constantly. Long phone calls late at night, text messages throughout the day, even a video chat when Vincent was supposed to be in a meeting but snuck away because he wanted to see her face. You're going to get in trouble, she teased, seeing his office in the background. I'm the boss. I can do what I want. Abuse of power. Absolutely, but worth it. She shook her head, grinning. How are you feeling about Monday? His expression sobered. Monday was his first chemotherapy session. Nervous, but my doctor says the prognosis is good if we're aggressive with treatment. Do you want me to come with you? He was quiet for a moment. You do that, of course I would. You barely know me, Bethany. Will you stop saying that? I know you well enough, and I want to be there. What about work? I'll take the day off. This is more important. She watched emotions flicker across his face, too quick to name. Finally, he nodded. Okay, yes, I'd really like you to be there. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Bethany met Vincent at the hospital, finding him in the waiting room looking pale and tense. But when he saw her, his face brightened. You came. I said I would. He stood, pulling her into a hug that felt like he was trying to absorb her strength. She held him tightly, running her hand up and down his back in soothing circles. It's going to be okay, she whispered. How do you know? Because you're strong, and you're not facing this alone anymore. The chemotherapy took hours. Bethany sat with him the entire time, holding his hand, talking when he wanted distraction, sitting in comfortable silence when he needed quiet. She watched the poison drip into his veins, watched his jaw clench against the nausea that would inevitably come, and felt her heart breaking for what he was going through. But she also felt something else growing inside her, something warm and certain and terrifying in its intensity. She was falling for him, hard and fast and completely. Bethany, he said at one point, his voice drowsy from the anti-nausea medication they had given him. Yeah, I think you might be the best thing that's ever happened to me. She squeezed his hand, tears pricking at her eyes. You're pretty great too. Even when I'm being difficult, especially when you're being difficult, he smiled sleepily. We really are too similar, aren't we? Both stubborn, both independent, both terrible at asking for help. Maybe that's why this works. We understand each other. Similar equals perfect, he mumbled, his eyes drifting closed. She watched him sleep, his hand still holding hers, and felt the truth of those words settle into her bones. They were similar in all the ways that mattered. They were both fighters, both survivors, both people who had built walls around themselves to avoid getting hurt. But together, those walls were coming down. The next few weeks were brutal. Vincent was sick more often than not, exhausted and frustrated and hating every minute of his weakness. But Bethany was there for all of it. She brought him soup when he couldn't keep anything else down. She sat with him during his bad days, not trying to fix anything, just being present. She celebrated his small victories, like keeping down a full meal or having enough energy to take a short walk. And slowly, gradually, Vincent learned to lean on her. He called her when he had a bad night. He let her help him when he was too weak to do things himself. He opened up about his fears and his hopes and his dreams for the future. "I always thought I'd have kids someday," he told her one evening. They were at his penthouse apartment, a stunning space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Bethany had been coming over most evenings after work, cooking dinner or just keeping him company. "That's why I did the fertility preservation. I didn't want cancer to take that choice away from me." "You'll be an amazing father," she said, curled up next to him on his ridiculously expensive couch. "You think so? I know so. You're caring and protective, even if you try to hide it behind that grumpy exterior." He laughed, the sound rough but genuine. Grumpy, intensely grumpy, like a bear with a thorn in its paw. "And you're the one who pulled out the thorn," something like that. He turned to look at her, his gray-blue eyes serious. "You know I'm falling in love with you, right?" Her breath caught. They had been dancing around the feeling for weeks now, but neither had said the words out loud. "Are you?" "Completely. Terrifyingly. I think I started falling that first day when you called me out for being rude." "I'm falling in love with you too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the strength she knew was there. "I know the timing is terrible. I'm dealing with cancer, I'm not exactly at my best, and we haven't even been dating that long." "Vincent, stop. The timing doesn't matter. What we have is real, and I'm not going anywhere." "We're too similar to give up easily," he said with a small smile. "Exactly. We're both fighters. We don't quit." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and she felt the truth of their connection in every cell of her body. This was right. He was right. They were right together. As the months passed, Vincent's treatment progressed. There were setbacks and scares, days when Bethany wasn't sure he would make it through. But there were also victories. The tumor was shrinking. His energy was slowly returning. His doctors were cautiously optimistic. Through it all, their relationship deepened. Vincent met Bethany's sister, Brianna, and her fiancé at their wedding, where he charmed everyone despite still being weak from treatment. Bethany met Vincent's estranged father at a tense lunch that ended with Vincent finally setting boundaries about what he would and wouldn't accept in their relationship. "I'm proud of you," Bethany said afterward as they walked through Central Park. It was early spring, the first real warmth after a brutal winter. "For what?" "Finally telling my father that his approval doesn't matter to me anymore, for standing up for yourself, for demanding to be treated with respect." He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I learned that from you. You never let anyone treat you as less than you deserve. We're both learning from each other." "Similar," he said. "Perfect," she finished, and they both smiled at their private joke. 6 months into his treatment, Vincent got the news they had been hoping for. The cancer was in remission. The aggressive chemotherapy and radiation had worked. He would need regular monitoring, but his doctors were optimistic about his long-term prognosis. Bethany cried when he told her, months of tension and fear finally releasing. Vincent held her, crying too, both of them overwhelmed with relief and gratitude and love. "We made it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You made it. You fought so hard. We fought together. I couldn't have done this without you." She pulled back to look at him, seeing the truth in his eyes. He looked different now than he had that first day at the clinic. Thinner, yes, but also more open, more genuine. The walls he had built around himself were gone, replaced by a warmth that radiated from him. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we live. Really live, not just exist." He took her hand, his grip firm and sure. "I want to travel with you. I want to spend lazy Sundays in bed reading the newspaper. I want to argue about what to watch on television and whose turn it is to cook dinner. I want all the normal, boring, beautiful things I thought I didn't need." "That sounds perfect. You sound perfect." "We're too similar," she teased. "No," he said seriously. "We're perfectly similar. There's a difference." Over the next year, they did exactly what Vincent had dreamed of. They traveled to Paris, where Vincent introduced Bethany to his mother, and they ate croissants by the Seine. They spent weekends at a beach house Vincent bought in the Hamptons, learning to sail and burning dinners and falling more deeply in love with each passing day. Vincent slowly reduced his hours at work, hiring a talented team to handle the day-to-day operations while he focused on the projects that truly excited him. He started a foundation to help cancer patients who couldn't afford treatment, channeling his experience into something meaningful. Bethany was promoted at the clinic, becoming the head coordinator and implementing new patient support programs that Vincent helped fund. They worked together sometimes, brainstorming ways to improve patient care, and she marveled at how their different skills complemented each other. "We make a good team," she said one evening as they reviewed proposals for the foundation. "The best team," he agreed. "Though I still think we should fund the research program first. And I still think we should focus on direct patient support. Stubborn. Look who's talking." He grinned at her across the table. "Too similar. Perfectly similar." It was on a crisp fall evening, exactly 18 months after that first dinner, that Vincent took Bethany back to the small Italian restaurant where everything had begun. She was suspicious immediately. "Why are we here?" she asked as they were seated at the same table they had occupied that first night. "Can't I take my girlfriend to dinner without an ulterior motive?" "You can, but you're being weird about it." He laughed, shaking his head. "You know me too well." "That's kind of the point of being in a relationship," they ordered, falling into the easy conversation that had become their norm. But Bethany noticed Vincent was distracted, his knee bouncing under the table, his fingers drumming against the tablecloth. "Okay, what's going on?" she finally asked after their entrees arrived. Vincent took a deep breath, his gray-blue eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart race. "Do you remember what we talked about that first night here?" "We talked about a lot of things. We talked about how we're too similar. How we're both stubborn and independent and difficult." "I remember." "And you said maybe similar was exactly what we needed." Bethany nodded, not trusting her voice. Vincent reached across the table, taking her hand. "You were right. Similar is exactly what we needed. You understand me in a way no one else ever has. You challenge me and support me and make me want to be better. You stood by me through the worst time of my life, and you never once wavered." "Vincent, let me finish." He took another deep breath, and she realized his hand was shaking slightly. "I spent my whole life thinking I needed to be independent, that asking for help was weakness, that letting someone in was dangerous. And then you crashed into my life with your kindness and your strength and your refusal to let me push you away, and you changed everything." He stood up, and Bethany's heart nearly stopped when he dropped to one knee beside their table. The other diners were starting to notice, but she barely registered them. Her entire world had narrowed to Vincent's face, to the small velvet box he was pulling from his pocket. "We're too similar to do anything halfway," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "So I'm not going to." Bethany Martinez, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you and arguing with you and being perfectly similar with you? Tears were streaming down her face, and she was nodding before he even finished speaking. Yes, yes, of course yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and then he was standing, pulling her into his arms and kissing her as the restaurant erupted in applause around them. Bethany kissed him back, tasting salt from both their tears, feeling like her heart might burst from happiness. "I love you," she said when they finally pulled apart. "I love you so much. I love you too. My stubborn, independent, perfect match." They sat back down, both grinning like idiots, neither able to stop touching each other. Bethany kept staring at the ring, a beautiful emerald-cut diamond that caught the light with every movement. "When did you get this?" she asked. "3 months ago. I've been carrying it around, waiting for the right moment. And you chose to come back here. Where else would I propose? This is where we started, where you first told me that being similar might mean we're perfect for each other." She reached across the table, framing his face with her hands. "We are perfect for each other, even when we drive each other crazy. Especially when we drive each other crazy." They planned the wedding for the following spring, wanting something intimate and meaningful rather than the society spectacle Vincent's position might have demanded. They chose a small vineyard upstate, inviting only their closest friends and family. Brianna was Bethany's maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. Vincent's half-brother came, and to everyone's surprise, they used the wedding as an opportunity to rebuild their relationship. Even Vincent's mother flew in from France, bringing her husband and showering Bethany with affection. But the moment Bethany remembered most clearly was when she walked down the aisle and saw Vincent's face. He looked at her like she was his entire world, like she had hung the moon and stars. And she knew she looked at him the same way. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, but Bethany barely heard the words. She was too focused on Vincent, on the way his hands trembled slightly as he took hers, on the emotion shining in his eyes. When it came time for the vows, Vincent spoke first. "Bethany, before you, I thought I had everything figured out. I built walls around myself and called it strength. I pushed people away and called it independence. But you showed me that real strength comes from letting people in, that true independence means choosing to be with someone, not being alone. You stood by me through the darkest time of my life, and you never once made me feel like a burden. You are my light, my home, my perfect match. I promise to love you fiercely, to challenge you when you need it, to support you always, and to never take for granted the gift of being loved by you." Bethany's turn was harder because she could barely speak through her tears. "Vincent, you changed my life the moment you walked into that clinic. You were difficult and demanding and absolutely impossible." Laughter rippled through the guests. "And you were also hurting and scared and trying so hard to be strong alone. Loving you has taught me that similar doesn't mean boring or easy. It means understanding. It means knowing someone so deeply that you can anticipate their needs, challenge their fears, and celebrate their triumphs as your own. We're both stubborn and independent and terrible at asking for help, but together, we're learning to be vulnerable, to be open, to be whole. I promise to love you through every challenge, to laugh with you through every joy, and to build a life with you that honors both of us. You're my best friend, my greatest adventure, and my perfect match." The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and when Vincent kissed her, Bethany felt like she was floating. This was it. This was the life she had always wanted but never quite believed she could have. The reception was joyful and chaotic and perfect. They danced until their feet hurt, laughed until their sides ached, and snuck away periodically just to steal a few moments alone together. Happy, Vincent asked during one such moment, pulling her close in a quiet corner of the venue, deliriously. You? I didn't know I could be this happy. A few years ago, I thought my life was over, and now look at us. Look at us, she echoed, resting her head on his chest and listening to his heartbeat. Strong and steady and alive. They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks exploring Rome, Florence, and the Amalfi Coast. They ate too much pasta, drank too much wine, and made love in their hotel rooms with the windows open to the warm Mediterranean air. We should come back here every year, Bethany said one evening as they watched the sunset over the ocean. Done. Every anniversary, we'll come to Italy. That's expensive. Vincent pulled her close, kissing her temple. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Let me use it to make you happy. You make me happy. The money is just a bonus. A very large bonus, she laughed, swatting his chest playfully. Okay, yes, a very large bonus. But I would love you even if you were broke. I know you would. That's one of the things I love most about you. You saw past all the money and the success to the scared, difficult man underneath. You weren't that difficult. Bethany, I complained about the music in a fertility clinic. Okay, you were pretty difficult. They returned to New York and settled into married life with surprising ease. Vincent had sold his penthouse and Bethany had left her small apartment. And together, they had bought a brownstone in Brooklyn with a backyard big enough for the dog they adopted from a local shelter. Max was a golden retriever mix with boundless energy and an uncanny ability to sense when either of them needed comfort. Vincent, who had claimed he didn't see the appeal of pets, was completely smitten within a week. I'm not carrying him around in a dog purse or anything, he said defensively when Bethany caught him baby talking to Max one evening. Of course not. That would be ridiculous. I'm serious, Bethany. I believe you, honey. You're laughing at me. Never. But she was, and it filled her heart with joy to see Vincent like this. Relaxed and playful and whole. A year into their marriage, they started talking seriously about having children. Vincent's fertility preservation had been successful, and his doctors had cleared him to move forward. It felt like the final piece of their happily ever after was falling into place. Are you scared? Bethany asked one night as they lay in bed, Max snoring softly at their feet. Terrified, Vincent admitted. What if I'm a terrible father? What if I mess them up the way my parents messed me up? You won't. You're self-aware enough to know what not to do, and you have more love in you than you give yourself credit for. How do you always know the right thing to say? Because we're too similar. I can read you like a book. He turned to face her, propping himself up on one elbow. Similar means perfect, remember, I remember. Then let's do this. Let's have a baby and see what happens. That's very romantic. Would you prefer me to wax poetic about creating life and building a family from you? That would be weird, he laughed, pulling her close. I love you, Bethany Sterling. I love you too. The process wasn't easy. It took several rounds of IVF and more than one heartbreak before the test finally came back positive. Bethany was at work when she got the call from her doctor, and she immediately left to go find Vincent. He was at the foundation office, meeting with potential donors, but his assistant took one look at Bethany's face and ushered her right in. I'm so sorry to interrupt, Bethany said to the room full of surprised executives. Vincent, can I talk to you for a second? He was already standing, concern written all over his face. What's wrong? Are you okay? She couldn't keep the smile off her face any longer. I'm pregnant. The room erupted in congratulations, but Vincent didn't seem to hear them. He was across the room in 3 strides, picking Bethany up and spinning her around. We're having a baby, he said, his voice full of wonder. We're having a baby, she confirmed, laughing and crying at the same time. He set her down gently as if she was suddenly made of glass. Are you sure? The test was positive. The doctor just called. I'm sure. He kissed her, tender and reverent, and she felt his tears mix with hers. When they pulled apart, the entire room was applauding. The pregnancy was healthy but not easy. Bethany had terrible morning sickness in the first trimester, and Vincent hovered like an anxious mother hen. He went to every appointment, read every pregnancy book he could find, and turned their spare bedroom into a nursery that looked like it belonged in a magazine. "You're nesting," Bethany teased, watching him adjust the mobile over the crib for the third time. "I'm not nesting. I'm preparing." "You're nesting." "Fine, I'm nesting, but this is important. Our child deserves the best. Our child will be lucky to have you as a father." He turned to her, his expression vulnerable. "You really think so?" "I know so." Their daughter was born on a snowy December evening, arriving 3 weeks early and taking them both by surprise. Vincent had been in the middle of a conference call when Bethany's water broke, and he had dropped everything to rush her to the hospital. "I've got you," he kept saying as they made their way through the contractions. "I'm right here." And he was. Through every contraction, every moment of pain and fear and exhaustion, Vincent was there holding her hand, wiping her forehead, telling her how strong she was. When their daughter finally arrived, tiny and perfect and screaming at the top of her lungs, Bethany watched Vincent's face transform. He stared at the baby like she was a miracle, tears streaming down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered as the nurse placed their daughter on Bethany's chest. "She is," Bethany agreed, stroking the baby's soft, dark hair. "What should we name her?" They had discussed names for months but never settled on one. But looking at their daughter now, with her scrunched-up face and tiny fists, Bethany knew. "Victoria," she said. "After your middle name." Vincent looked at her in surprise. "You want to name her after me?" "You're going to be an amazing father. I want her to carry a piece of you." He bent down, kissing Bethany's forehead and then gently touching Victoria's cheek. "Victoria Sterling. It's perfect." "She's perfect," Bethany corrected. "Just like us. Too similar, perfectly similar." The first year of parenthood was exhausting and overwhelming, and more wonderful than either of them had imagined. Victoria was a good baby, but she had her parents' stubborn streak, refusing to sleep through the night until she was nearly 10 months old. Vincent, who had been so worried about being a bad father, was completely devoted. He took paternity leave and spent his days changing diapers, singing off key lullabies, and talking to Victoria like she could understand every word. "You know she can't actually respond, right?" Bethany said one afternoon, finding Vincent having a serious conversation with their daughter about the stock market. "She's learning. It's never too early to start her education." "She's 4 months old." "Exactly. We're already behind." Bethany laughed, sitting down next to them on the couch. Victoria was staring up at Vincent with wide eyes, occasionally making soft cooing sounds. "She loves you," Bethany said softly. "I love her more than I thought it was possible to love anything, except you. I love you both so much it scares me sometimes. That's what being a parent is, I think. Being terrified and grateful all at once." He shifted Victoria to one arm so he could pull Bethany close with the other. "We make a good team. We always have." As Victoria grew, she became a perfect blend of both her parents. She had Vincent's gray-blue eyes and Bethany's dark hair. She was stubborn like them both, independent even as a toddler, and surprisingly empathetic for someone so young. "She's just like us," Vincent said one evening when Victoria was 3, watching her carefully build a tower of blocks only to knock it down and start over with determination. "Too similar," Bethany agreed. "Perfectly similar," Vincent corrected, wrapping his arm around her waist. They had fallen into a comfortable rhythm, balancing work and parenting, and their relationship with a grace that had taken time to develop. Vincent had fully stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his company, focusing instead on the foundation and spending time with his family. Bethany had transitioned to consulting work, allowing her more flexibility to be home with Victoria. "I never thought I'd have this," Vincent said one night after they had finally gotten Victoria to sleep. They were in their backyard, Max at their feet, watching the stars come out over Brooklyn. "Have what? This life. This happiness. A family that actually feels like family." Bethany leaned her head on his shoulder. "You deserve it. We deserve it. We both spent so long building walls, protecting ourselves from getting hurt. And then we found each other and realized that being similar didn't mean we had to be alone. It meant we could understand each other in a way no one else could." "Similar means perfect," she said softly. "It does," he agreed. "It really does." When Victoria was 5, they decided to give her a sibling. The second pregnancy was easier, and their son was born on a bright summer morning. They named him Vaughn, and he was the complete opposite of his sister. Where Victoria was serious and determined, Vaughn was laid back and happy to go with the flow. How did we create such different children? Vincent wondered aloud when Vaughn was 6 months old, watching Victoria try to teach her baby brother to stack blocks while he kept knocking them over and giggling. Maybe they each took different parts of us. Victoria got our determination and stubbornness. Vaughn got our ability to eventually relax and go with the flow. We can relax and go with the flow, we learned, didn't we, together? He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "We did. You taught me that being in control isn't the same as being happy. And you taught me that letting someone in doesn't make me weak." They watched their children play, Max supervising from his favorite spot in the sun, and Bethany felt overwhelming gratitude for the life they had built. It hadn't been easy. They had faced cancer and fertility struggles and all the normal challenges of marriage and parenthood. But they had faced them together, their similarities making them stronger rather than pulling them apart. Years passed in a blur of school plays and birthday parties, of family vacations and quiet evenings at home. Vincent's cancer remained in remission, though he still went for regular checkups that made them both nervous. The foundation continued to grow, helping thousands of cancer patients access the care they needed. Bethany eventually went back to the clinic part-time, finding joy in helping other families navigate their fertility journeys, just as she and Vincent had navigated theirs. She often thought about that first day when Vincent had walked in, difficult and demanding and scared underneath it all. "You ever think about how we met?" she asked one evening. Victoria was 12 and Vaughn was 7, both upstairs doing homework while Bethany and Vincent prepared dinner together. "All the time. I think about how I almost didn't go to that appointment. I was so scared of what it meant, of admitting that I needed help. I'm glad you went. Me too. Best decision I ever made, aside from marrying you." She hip-checked him away from the cutting board, taking over chopping the vegetables. "You're going to cut yourself if you keep looking at me instead of what you're doing. Can't help it. You're distracting. Even after all these years." Especially after all these years. Victoria's voice floated down from upstairs. "Dad, can you help me with this math problem?" Vincent grinned. "That's my cue. Try not to miss me too much." Bethany watched him go, her heart full. This was their life now. Homework help and family dinners, inside jokes and comfortable silences. It was ordinary and extraordinary all at once. When Victoria graduated high school, Vincent cried more than Bethany had ever seen him cry, including when she was born. Their daughter was heading to college to study medicine, wanting to help people the way the doctors had helped her father. "I'm so proud of her," he said, watching Victoria throw her cap in the air with her classmates. "She's incredible, just like her parents. Too similar to us." perfectly similar. Vaughn graduated 5 years later, choosing to study business like his father but with a focus on social entrepreneurship. He wanted to use business as a force for good, combining both his parents' passions. "We did good," Vincent said at Vaughn's graduation party, watching their son laugh with friends and family. "We did great," Bethany corrected. "Both our kids are happy, healthy, and kind. What more could we ask for? Nothing. Absolutely nothing." They were in their 50s now, their hair showing threads of gray, laugh lines crinkling around their eyes. But when Vincent looked at Bethany, he still saw the woman who had refused to let him push her away, who had stood by him through the worst and best moments of his life. "I love you," he said, pulling her close. "I love you too. We're too similar, you know, still stubborn, still independent, still terrible at asking for help." She laughed, the sound as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. "Maybe that's why it works. We understand each other." Similar means perfect. It always has. They stood together in their backyard, surrounded by the life they had built, the family they had created, the love they had nurtured. Max had passed away years ago, but they had adopted 2 more rescue dogs who were currently wrestling near the garden. Their children were launching their own lives, but they still came home for Sunday dinners and holidays. Vincent thought about that first day at the clinic, when he had been so lost and scared and alone. He had built an empire but had no one to share it with. And then Bethany had walked into his life with her kindness and strength and refusal to accept his walls, and everything had changed. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For seeing past the difficult exterior. For staying when things got hard. For teaching me that being similar doesn't mean being alone. It means finding someone who understands you completely." Bethany turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face. "Thank you for letting me in, for trusting me with your heart, for building this beautiful life with me." He kissed her, slow and sweet, pouring decades of love into that single moment. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "Should we go inside?" she asked. "Victoria and Vaughn will be here soon for dinner." "In a minute. I just want to hold you for a minute." So they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the sun set over the city where they had met and fallen in love and built a life that exceeded both their wildest dreams. They were too similar, everyone had said at the beginning. Too stubborn, too independent, too set in their ways. But they had proven everyone wrong. Being similar didn't mean they were doomed to clash. It meant they understood each other's struggles, celebrated each other's victories, and faced every challenge as a team. Similar didn't mean boring or predictable or easy. Similar meant perfect. And they had been perfect together from the very start, even when neither of them had realized it yet. The difficult millionaire and the patient coordinator who had refused to give up on him. 2 people who had built walls around themselves, only to find that together, those walls could become windows to a better life. Their story had started with a complaint about music being too loud, and a joke about being too similar. It had continued through cancer and fertility struggles, through learning to trust and to love and to be vulnerable. And now, decades later, surrounded by the family they had created and the life they had built, they knew the truth. Being similar had always meant they were perfect for each other. They just had to find each other first. Vincent looked at his wife, his best friend, his perfect match, and felt gratitude wash over him. "Ready to go in?" "Ready," Bethany said, taking his hand. They walked inside together, toward the laughter and warmth of their family, their similar hearts beating in perfect synchronization. 2 stubborn, independent people who had found their way to each other and created something beautiful in the process. Similar and perfect, now and always.